Isn't a lot of Chinese naval navy smaller ships to patrol monitor the small waterways it has for ocean access? Yes. So absolutely, China has a presence. They only have two naval destroyers, the Shandong and the I forget what the other one is called. Um, they have two of them up. So what's interesting is let's just take a look at the map here, right? Let's say at any given time there is naval presence sort of like this in the Pacific Ocean here. And China's got two battle destroyers, something like that, that more or less are kind of just geolocked here. Let's say this is their green zone, right? They're more or less geolocked to here. And that's about
Oh,
it.
you
Aircraft
bought a
carrier. That's correct. Yeah. What's up? Oh yeah, this traditional Chinese, but like that.
fuck it.
No. That's got to be Taiwan. There's no way. No, there's no way that's
It's close enough. Close enough. Hey, we good. We good. We still win. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So AK Mojo, you're gonna love this. So what's interesting about this right now is that U.S. Navy ships are always positioned around here. They do regular drills around Okinawa and stuff. China right now is developing land-based missiles that go intercontinental, right? So these are pretty cool. I'll give you guys an idea of what these look like. So let's say China has some missiles positioned, here along the coastline, right? And they reach a distance of roughly, let's say, this yellow line here. So they kind of protect this sort of reach here. Call that roughly, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000 miles off the Chinese mainland. What's interesting is right now China's developing a missile. I'm pretty sure they actually already have it. That I think it reaches, 15,000 miles beyond the mainland. So positioned strategically sort of in these areas here, these missiles can actually start extending very, very far. So these missiles can actually reach sort of a very, very wide base. What does this do? This pushes U.S. Navy ships into safer areas beyond this line. It actually pushes them out of their naval bases here in Okinawa, Taiwan, Philippines, Korea, etc. Right? Because China again has no access because of this chain wall. These island chain walls that kind of keep it locked from the Pacific. So what it does is it tries to develop ballistic missiles that can take out aircraft carriers, naval destroyers, and stuff like that. That will have to push out Navy ships, American Navy ships, into a zone where these missiles cannot reach them, right? And that gives China some more breathing room in terms of navigating trade and asserting dominance, especially around its own waters in Taiwan. But it allows these Chinese naval ships, right, and these aircraft carriers to now start expanding out here, right? And the third aircraft carrier is actually coming up soon. I think in about a year or two. So this gives China some sort of a pushback because it's too constrained inside of its own trade area right now. And that's kind of what's going on. So this moves here. Actually, this moves here. This moves here. And then you can think of this third new aircraft carrier, right? That'll just kind of go around fucking around with the Philippines probably. This is kind of generally what you're talking about. So, and then American naval ships will then have to move back, right? They move back behind this line. That's all just from a ballistic missile that can take out a ship in 10 minutes time. Right. So in the event of any sort of a breakout in war, these mainland missile systems are kind of what gives China some room. Now, it doesn't have missile systems to reach, across the Pacific Ocean. It's about like 4,500 miles to the United States. It just doesn't have that, right? but within its own little geo territory here, it certainly can. Now, for the last 2 decades prior to this, because China only recently got these 2 aircraft carriers, it's taken a long time. China's been doing what we call the Belt and Road Initiative. You guys have probably heard about this. This massive infrastructure project. So they actually have been building railways into Iran. They've been building it through Mongolia into Siberia, into Europe, right? They're essentially trying to build. There's one that I think comes through. I'm pretty sure there's one that comes through. I think somewhere around here to reach the port cities down here. China has massive infrastructure projects because of Taiwan. Because Taiwan doesn't belong back to the mainland, it needs to actually spend trillions of dollars securing a land-based access to different kinds of oceans. So they've built infrastructure projects to try to give it access to the Indian Ocean, right? That's this area here for trade, and also into this ocean here, right? So it desperately needs to build these infrastructure projects for that. That's the reason why. There's a bunch of other geopolitical places that require China to be a little bit more strategic, but these again are very susceptible to just being bombed out, right? I mean, it's very easy to actually choke out China in terms of supply chains. If war ever broke out, send a missile on one of these roads, one of these train tracks, and you're kind of SOL, right? But Eddie, to your point for why China would never invade Taiwan. One is, if we kind of just clear the map here, erase all markups. So let's not do blue because blue represents let's do this one. The trade that goes between China and Taiwan is massive. They're actually massive trading partners with each other. You think about tech, you think about semiconductors. NVIDIA's always circumventing U.S. Sanctions on semiconductors. Anytime the United States says, hey, you can't sell this particular chip to China, NVIDIA just skirts around it by creating a different alternative. Instead of an H100 chip, they create some sort of Chinese market variant, that's, supposed to be inferior, but China keeps getting the technology regardless, right? It always makes its way somehow there. So they're massive trading partners with each other. They do a lot of goods. A lot of stuff flows through them. Can you not see my screen, Chronos, or what?
Oh no, that's GeoGuessr. His thing is just bugging.
That's GeoGuessr. Yeah. Apparently they do though. Oh yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. So they could reach it via the Arctic. Yeah. Interesting. Well, that's a fun fact, Matt, but you just ruined my example. Anyways, back to this. So where was I? Yeah, so there's massive amounts of trade between China and Taiwan. In fact, China and Taiwan actually just created a new I forget what it's called, but it's a new kind of visa or passport where you can go and stay in China for 6 months, no problem, and vice versa. Chinese people can go to Taiwan and stay there for 6 months, no problem. The whole kind of point there was for making sure families don't get separated. So culturally, historically, it's the same people, right? And they do massive amounts of trade with each other. Suppose that China did invade Taiwan. Suppose they did. What do we think would come of it? What possible economic interest could you get from an invasion of Taiwan? Well, we don't know if we get instant war with the United States, but certainly that's a looming threat, right? Maybe you get a nuke your way. Suppose they wanted to do that. But in more practical terms, right? Suppose the United States doesn't even... Listen, the United States doesn't even want to engage with Iran right now. It's just sort of threatening and posturing. I highly doubt the United States is going to be super gung-ho even if China did invade Taiwan, I'm telling you guys right now, I highly doubt they would want to take on China, because then that would be taking on Russia. And I'm pretty sure the United States does not want to take on both Russia and China at the same time. It couldn't even take on Afghanistan and Iraq at the same time, let alone Russia and China. Okay. So there's a lot of projection for what the US military can do, but taking on two superpowers like that is ridiculous, right? So in the event that China does invade Taiwan, let's run through a hypothetical scenario. You get a lot of bloodshed. There's no economic upside, and both of them would tank their economies. What's in it for China to invade Taiwan? There's absolutely nothing. You would tank both economies overnight. For what? For blood and for some access maybe to the Pacific Ocean. This is why the Chinese policy on Taiwan for the last 70 years has always been diplomatic reunion. They always prefer a peaceful reunification. China actually has a very different approach. China utilizes social media and cultural, call it warfare if you want, or whatever it is. But basically, there's a lot of Chinese effort that's actually put towards, making sure social media shows good sides of China, that, to kind of dispel a lot of American propaganda, to make sure that, this and that. To kind of convince the people. Now, what's really interesting is that in Taiwan, there's two main parties, as you guys all know. There's the KMT, that's the blue party, and then there's the Kuomintang, and they are the green party. So these two parties essentially run Taiwan, and they just go take turns back and forth. It's just no different than Republicans and Democrats, right? Sent you my current Forsaken DM. Okay, I'm gonna open that later because I don't want to see your ding dong right now. Anyways, they take turns going back and forth. The Green Party is essentially the pro-independence. Taiwan should be green. That's what they see that on the map. The Blue Party sees China on the map, so they say, well, we should reunify with the mainland. We should both be, just back together. What's interesting is that the leader of the new KMT party, the Blue Party there, has been the most pro-China candidate in Taiwanese history, openly calling for reunification. And what's interesting right now in Taiwan is you guys probably have not heard the news that the Green Party president right now is what? Under impeachment. They're trying to get him out. And if they do, is a good chance here that the Blue Party could actually come into power, and they're going to have the most pro-China policy in recent memory, ever. Not even recent memory, historically ever. So China doesn't need to do an invasion. They just don't. They're playing the long game. And as for Yuzakar saying that I'm afraid she will do it just for his legacy, I highly disagree, actually. She has a legacy of bringing China in from, the last 2 decades. He's done a fantastic amount of work in China. His legacy will always be cemented in the economy and the market share, and really honestly making massive strides over the last 20 years in Chinese places like EV tech, a lot of science, right? I think an invasion of Taiwan that tanks both economies, because they're massive trading partners with each other, an invasion of Taiwan would actually scar his legacy. Again, China is a country that doesn't think in 4-year terms. They're perfectly fine. They waited 99 years for Hong Kong. They can wait 99 for Taiwan. They're an extremely patient country and methodical. They don't need it necessarily now. But if they know that they can get this in 10, 15 years without doing an invasion, they will do that route rather than invade. That's why China right now is winning a lot of trade policy, right? So You guys have heard, right? Canada just recently did, our Prime Minister Mark Carney from Canada, he just flew into China, into Beijing, which is roughly around here, got a trade deal. Australia does a lot of trade with China. Europe is doing a lot of trade with China. Why is that? One is Trump is alienating a lot of trade partners right now, but also the US is extremely chaotic. It's invading countries and kidnapping presidents and talking about forcefully taking Greenland, talking about annexing their neighbor Canada, talking about maybe taking Mexico. Sort of this dominance of brute thing for the North American hemisphere. You can even call it the Western hemisphere. They're throwing on tariffs willy-nilly. So right now, if you were to do trade, Australia is a 7-nation country, right? Canada is one of the 7-nation countries, right? Why are they turning to more trade with China? Australia has a shit ton of Chinese EVs there right now. Right? They allow Chinese investments into their energy sector. Canada recently just said, like in this literally 1 day ago, yesterday, that they're starting to they will allow for Chinese investments into Canadian energy. That's oil, right? Because of what you guys just did in Venezuela. So Canada's looking to sell its oil now abroad to the east. So the reason why China is a preferred trading partner, even if they are, authoritarian, they're stable. They are an incredibly stable country. China does not go out and start kidnapping, sovereign leaders. It does not go out there trying to cause war. Sometimes they shoot some Indians across the border because of border skirmishes here. That's about the extent of what China does. They don't go out and really kind of extend the territory. They have some skirmishes here about some islands. They have some conflicts here with Vietnam about the South China Sea. It's relatively stable. And so if you're looking to do trading with them, they're not the kind of people that just throw on tariffs to force your hand into something. They do retaliatory tariffs, right? So Canadian tariffs from China on, our canola, our potash, all of this stuff was in retaliation first to the tariffs that the United States asked Canada to put onto China. So these were retaliatory tariffs, and they both basically just got lifted in this as of 24 hours ago, right? China is an incredibly stable trading partner. An invasion of Taiwan also undermines that stability. Oh my gosh, this is an authoritarian regime that will invade trading partners. That is not something that's good for business. And if there's anything you guys have to understand about China, is that they're extremely methodical about business. This is a country where their foreign policy isn't might, it's money, right? And they're more than willing to spend on trading partners. They spent $200 billion on Venezuela. I'm pretty sure they're pissed right now with what the US just did. They spend trillions abroad, again, all over South America and South Africa. So an invasion of Taiwan undermines a lot. It undermines trading partner stability that will likely affect trading goods for them. And again, China's hitting record surpluses right now, so they're not going to do that. Right? They just hit $1 trillion in global surplus in 2025, despite the tariffs. Right? Why? Because trade is up across the board with other partners. Because when the United States tariffed the entire world at the same time, they all just said, oh, well, we're just going to trade with these guys instead. Right? That's what we're going to do. So they just did more trade. Trade with Australia, I believe, is up either 18% or 25%, right? In 2025. Trade is across the board up, generally speaking, a net up across all trading partners with China, because they just decided, instead of spending hundreds of billions of dollars moving my entire supply chain to the United States, I'm just going to deal business with China, and I'm going to wait out Trump for 4 years. We're not going to deal with the tariffs. And that's what you're seeing people do. Because I guarantee over the next 4 years, China is going to be a lot more stable and predictable than the United States is right now. The United States is incredibly unpredictable right now, We have no idea what Trump is going to do in the remaining 3 years of his term. He could take Greenland, he could take Canada, he could take Venezuela, he might go into Mexico. Who knows? It's all on the table. That's an incredibly volatile trading partner, right? You have trading policies like USMCA, right, for North America that can get changed on a drop of a dime. That is a long established 25-year-old trading policy that just got nuked. What's that about, right? So, an invasion of Taiwan does absolutely nothing for China. It would tank their economy, it would undermine their trading partner stability, it would be bloodshed culturally because you're killing, really honestly, just brothers right across the border. There's no reason why they would ever do it. There's other ways that China can approach this, right? Diplomatically, with party changes, right? Culturally, they can do this with social media. Militarily, they can push back, a little bit more control and for access here to the Pacific Ocean with military systems. It's methodical and it's predictable and it's stable and it does it without firing a single shot. And there's something to be admired about the way that they conduct business and the way they conduct foreign policy, regardless of what you kind of think about the regime, which is, again, that's a loaded word. Regardless of whatever you think about the Chinese government, they play the game on a very different kind of level compared to other countries. It's extremely, extremely methodical. But yeah, Eddie, that's why China will never invade Taiwan. Happy to tell you. Yeah, no. There's a lot of other interesting things, and this is actually one of the things I was going to talk about for our monthly workshop in OA Premium. This is kind of a sneak peek. But I think to understand the state of the world that is in today, you need to really understand the moves that China is playing because they're in direct competition right now with the United States. So whatever is happening to us on our side of the ocean here, when we're talking about capital markets, when we're talking about moves that are being made, when we're talking about why Venezuela, why Greenland, these are all for geopolitical reasons. They're very strategic things that's going on. When we're talking about the economy in Iran being eroded, I wonder by who, right? I wonder who has the most sanctions on Iran right now that their currency is basically collapsing over the last 3-4 months. I wonder who, right? I wonder who stokes the flames of the Iranian protests and then, threatens to fire shots at them. I wonder for whose benefit that would be, right? Clearly, the United States right now is positioning itself so that it can put leverage on the table, a threat of violence on the table, with Iran to get nukes off the table, right? And there's a lot more, but I think you guys have to understand what Iran means to China, right? And why China needs stability in Iran for various reasons. I'll tell you right now, Iran is this country right here, right? So right now you have the Iranian uprising, correct? Okay. I'll give you a sneak peek into what I'm going to talk about for OA Premium. But Iran right now is obviously, there's massive protests in Iran. Everyone is saying, oh my God, look at this regime. Whatever you think of the regime in Iran, it doesn't really matter. I want you to look at it from a geopolitical and military kind of perspective, right? So, Iranian economy goes down because the US sanctions the shit out of them. Because they've always done that to countries that they don't like. They sanctioned the shit out of them. And countries got so tired of this that they started the whole BRICS trading organization. That's a trading organization. Brazil, Russia, Iran, China, right? I forget what the S stands for. But that's essentially what happens. So who's the number one supplier of oil to China? You may think it's Russia. A lot of people think it's Russia, but it's not. It's actually Iran. Iran has been sanctioned from selling oil almost to every single US ally. Right? That's how hard these come down. Guess who needs the oil? China. Guess who gets the oil? China. Because Iran is the number one oil exporter to China. It's actually so big, they actually give China 2 times more oil than the Russians do. Think about that for a second. That's crazy, right? This is roughly around 20% of China's energy needs, comes in the form of Iranian oil that comes in. And what happens is, like AK Mojo, you said, yes, they do control the Strait of Hormuz, right? And that's this thing right here. So if you look at the Strait of Hormuz, so I'm just going to go ahead and just outline Iran. You have many, many countries. Saudi Arabia takes this route to come through here. You have Kuwait. You have the UAE. And you have essentially every single oil producing nation in the Middle East needs to essentially go through the Strait of Hormuz. That's this little choke point right here. Guess who fucking controls that? Iran. So relatively speaking, Iran and, obviously other people will send in their stuff too, but Iran pretty much has a very strong naval presence in the Strait of Hormuz. Right. Where else? So this oil, let's say, comes out of Iran. Let's go with this block here. This oil comes out of Iran, right? Goes through the Strait of Hormuz. Let's say it starts here. It goes where? Oh, hey, Reza. We have Iran on the map right now because Eddie asked me if China is going to invade Taiwan. It's a very long story, but join in. But basically, give me a sec. I'm back. Sorry. I got to go to lunch in about 10 minutes here. So, Iran is the number one provider of oil. It comes down the Indian Ocean here. And again, China doesn't really like India. Right? So, they've been trying to work it out, but they've got border skirmishes here and there. They eventually fire some shots across. They kill each other sometimes. They beat each other with like brooms and whatever the fuck. But it's kind of a massive thing that a lot of their petroleum comes past the Indian Ocean, right? So where does this ultimately go? How does it get into China? It doesn't go through here, right? That's not where it goes through. It goes through something where we call the Strait of Malacca. That's the trip that it takes. Pakistan in the future. Yeah, that's why China is so cozy with Pakistan, because it wants a nuclear power who's an adversary of India to make sure India doesn't do anything stupid, right? That's a strategic alliance for Pakistan and China. Yeah, and they are also building infrastructure through Pakistan to get to this access. Why Pakistan? So they don't like India. India doesn't really like China, but China's very cozy with Pakistan, who is culturally the same. Sorry, Indians and Pakistanis, but culturally the same, right? They've had their own civil war and their own splitting. It's not for culture. That's the thing, that Pakistan and China are close. It's because Pakistan has nuclear weapons, and they also just happen to fucking hate India, right? So that's a great check for where a lot of your energy has to route through, which is an adversary, right? So Pakistan keeps them in check at all times, the same way that North Korea kind of keeps the rest of, these other US allies in check, like Korea and Japan, right? Those are strategic alliances. What happens then is that it goes through this place here that we call the Strait of Malacca between Indonesia and Malaysia. Who here has heard of the Strait of Malacca? Chrono says duh. Yeah. Snoozy says he has. Yeah. You know all the choke points. Yeah. All right. That sounds dirty, Mojo. What you talking about? Choke points. Anyways, the Strait of Malacca is essentially where about 80% of imported energy comes in through China. So China's energy split kind of goes something like this: 50% coal, right? So 50% coal, roughly, I think 18% renewable, right? So this is like, air and water, right? So solar, wind, hydro, something like that. And then you have essentially like the remaining whatever balance is here, like 25% ish roughly, that come from oil. That's China's energy split. So one of the massive reasons why you hear about Chinese solar, Chinese wind farms, I mean, China has mountains covered in solar panels. Have you guys ever seen this? Let me show you. Let me show you what this looks like. Um, so you guys may never have seen this, but look at the photo that I've just posted in the chat. We're talking just absolute mountains covered in Chinese solar panels. That's how massive this is in China. Why is China so into renewable energy? Yeah. Yeah, no, you've absolutely seen way crazier. Yeah. They just cover just whole swaths, right? They need it because there's the massive choke point geopolitically for the Strait of Malacca. Malaysia is US friendly, Indonesia is US friendly, Singapore is US friendly, right? This entire Vietnam to some extent fucking hates America for what they did. Much more friendly with China, right? So getting it past the Strait of Malacca is kind of much easier for China. But getting it through here is like going through a colonoscopy of U.S. naval support. It's crazy. At any given time, the United States could choke off the Strait of Malacca right there, and it would probably amount to an act of war because of directly cutting off some roughly 20-25% of Chinese energy needs. To give you an idea, right? So this is why Iran is a very strategic partner for the start of the energy supply chain, but it's also why a lot of Chinese influence is now kind of focused on Southeast Asia, right? But also why Pakistan is very important in terms of the infrastructure project, right? And also for a whole host of other reasons, right? Why China makes alliances with Uzbekistan, right? Some country that by US standards is who gives a shit, right? It's all because they need to make sure their infrastructure doesn't get bombed or destroyed. Right? That's why a lot of the times when China makes the loans, they'll stipulate that it has to be a Chinese company that goes in to build it because they need the infrastructure. They're not, in some sense, they're buying the influence, but they really do need that infrastructure to be top quality. So they send in Chinese companies themselves to build airports, trains, and roadways and stuff like this. And then to ensure that it can actually handle the kind of goods that they need. They don't give that to local contractors, right? So the massive reason why China is so big on renewable energy and why they dominate EVs right now is out of necessity. The reason why China has 109 EV companies right now is because of the Strait of Malacca. It's because of geography. Think about that for a reason. Like we've been talking about Huawei having cars, Xiaomi having cars, all these things. It's because of energy choke points, right? And so this is this has really kind of forced China to look at renewable energies and clean energy generations that they can do domestically. Do drone companies are cleaning the panels? They have like sprinkler systems in there, and so what's interesting with the Chinese mountains that are covered with solar panels is that it provides quite a lot of shading. So actually, in the Gobi Desert, which is in North China here, the Gobi Desert, they actually started just massive solar panel farms in the middle of the desert, and then the sprinkler systems will spray off the sand that gets on there, and then the solar panels provide shade. So think of a massive solar panel like this provides shade on the bottom. The sprinkler system, drips a bunch of water down here, and then there's shade. And for the first time in a long time, the Gobi Desert has started to have grass grow. And then what happens? Then the Chinese send sheep there, and the sheep start eating the thing. So this solar panel thing has actually started 3 different kinds of industries there. It supports the local agriculture, supports actually reclimatization of the Gobi Desert. Gobi Desert has been the greenest it's ever been in thousands of years because of Chinese solar panels. So that's an interesting side tangent there. But what's interesting is that what pushes China to seemingly be so big on renewable energy is not because they care about climate change, and it's not because they signed something in Paris, right, for the Paris Accord. It's not that at all. It really boils down to just the Strait of Malacca, right? If we wanted to become super simplistic about it, but it's interesting, and here's an interesting fact for you, Kronos. Have you heard about the new mega dam that China's building right now? Yeah. So there's a huge mega dam that's happening here in southern Tibet, which is this region here, right? So there is I believe somewhere around here. I'm pretty sure it's right there. There's a new mega dam project being built in the Yarling Sangpo Canyon. This is the single largest canyon in the entire world. It's about 3 times the size of the Grand Canyon, to give you an idea. The water there drops vertically 2,000 meters, so there's so much kinetic potential in the water going from high to low. It's in Tibet, yeah, southern Tibet. So the Yarling Sangpo has this 2,000 meter drop of water, and it's absolutely insane. China wants to build a mega dam there, and they've already done one with the 3 Gorges, which is somewhere around here. Right? Actually, no, that's a little bit too far in that. The three Gorges Dam is somewhere around here. This is currently right now, it's the single largest. Yeah, that's the bend that they're trying to conquer right now for the next 8 years. So the 3 Gorges Dam here, it is such a big project that it's the single largest energy generating source in the entire world. 22 gigawatts, I believe. To give you an idea of what 22 gigawatts is, a nuclear power plant is roughly 1 gigawatt. So China built a dam that was so big, it was generating roughly what 22 nuclear plants were generating. In fact, it slowed the world, according to NASA, by 0.0 seconds because of how massive this fucking dam is. Right? The rotation of the world, just to give you an idea. That was 12 years ago. China now is building a mega dam here again to change all of this. They need less oil. They're tired of playing this game. They're tired of needing to reinforce this and that. They want to get away from this. They want to increase renewables. They want to get off coal, right? For pollution reasons. And also because renewables are fucking cheap. It's free, right? So China's building a mega dam project here worth roughly about just over 2 trillion Chinese yuan, which is roughly about $140 billion, which is roughly about what the United States has committed for a highway between San Francisco and LA for the last 23 years. Right? So money goes a lot farther than the China server, but that is about 2 trillion Chinese yuan that's going into this. This mega dam project is going to generate 60 gigawatts. That's 60 nuclear power plants, by far the largest single energy generating source in the entire world. 60 gigawatts. To give you guys an idea of what 60 gigawatts can do, this one plant that they're putting up in Tibet is going to be enough to power all of Germany from one plant. All of Germany. Crazy stuff. It's going to account for roughly an 8% gain on China's energy just coming from this one plant. Roughly almost 10% of its power needs can come from this one plant. So anyways, that is a brief sneak peek into the talk that I'm going to be giving for OA Premium at the end of the month here. But if you'd like to sign up or whatever, or sign up for Moon, something like that, we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail. There's a lot of geopolitics that are at play here that is really going to affect the way that money is moving. And you guys don't really understand, I think, most of the moves that are being made out there. You hear communist, you hear whatever, then you hear Trump, 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 America first, freedom, I get free speech. I get to say things. Meanwhile, money moves are being made here that have direct impact on our investments, our trading, metals, silver, technology, prices you're going to pay for the next iPhone, right? Your cars, your clothing, everything, right? So let's not be a W-2 and not understand what's going on in the world just because of, patriotism. But anyways, that's me on my soapbox here. How do I know everything? I'm gonna let my girl Cardi B let you say let answer this one, Azula. I make money moves. Anyways, guys, I'm off to lunch. If you want to hear more, I'll see you guys. For those, I think Slime, you're in there. Slime is no longer. He's not here. It's fine. He'll hear it. Anyways, have a lovely weekend, everybody.
Thank you guys for coming. Thank you for staying.
Yep.
Good presentation, Yamada.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it gets much more in detail. In the full presentation, I really want to talk about how the Middle East plays a major factor into this, how Greenland plays a factor into this,